While it almost goes without saying that I enjoy this genre a lot more than Octane Core, my thoughts about it are surprisingly similar.
How dare you!
Yes, today I am continuing what I'm calling my RANT series with my thoughts on why the modern wave of old school death metal is incredibly overrated. Now mind you, I love plenty of bands with similar sounds or largely make the same album over and over again, but that's also a reason why you'll rarely find those bands listed as my favorites or with albums that make my top release of the year videos. And that is why the title of this video is not that these bands suck, it's merely that they feel overrated and overrepresented within the current scope of the death metal genre. I won't deny that it's cool to see someone like Meat Canyon rocking a 200 stab wound shirt and bringing death metal to a larger audience, but between people like him and Turkey Tom, it's almost always a band from the list I have for this video, to the point that they may as well say Metallica or Slayer at this point. We're talking bands formed in the last decade or so that are merely retreading the same ground already beaten to the clay by formative death metal bands in the 90s like Bolt Thrower, Morbid Angel, and Cannibal Corpse. So let's examine some of these bands' recent albums to see what I'm talking about. We already mentioned 200 Stab Wounds, so let's consider their new record Manual Manic Procedures. The second full-length album from this Cleveland old-school death metal band, and they do a fine job of capturing that old spirit, but rarely bring anything new or exciting to the table. It's a tight enough 30 minutes, but frequently I just found myself wishing I was listening to the classics instead. Just a lot of really kind of mid material. Then we have Undeath with It's Time to Rise from the Grave. I heard so many of my peers raving about this New York death metal album when it came out, but even after multiple listens trying to prove myself wrong, it still just struck me as forgettable. Even the better songs like Defiled Again just feel like a lesser retread of Morbid Angel songs. Necrobionics is pretty fun, some solid riffs on Enhancing the Dead. I just expect a little bit more at this point, and as it wears on, I honestly feel kind of bored. Then of course there's Sanguisugabogg with Homicidal Ecstasy. Now these guys have become like the darling poster children for modern death metal at this point, and while I enjoyed this record and found it to be a significant improvement from the last one with plenty of infectious grooves and swampy atmosphere, the lack of vocal variety and once more very familiar ideas right down to tired imagery and music videos still left me just scratching my head as to why it was such a spotlight release. Like fine, it's good, but why is it like the top of the conversation heap?
Not quite my tempo.
Similar thoughts with Outer Heaven, with Infinite Psychic Depths. This one was also praised to hell, and while I did appreciate the cavernous production job, some kind of retro vibes there too, layered vocals, spooky guitar harmonies, and techier performances, but I still just thought it was fine. Best of the year?
Not even close.
There's also Creeping Death with Boundless Domain. Crusty beats, raging HM2, and some seriously malevolent-sounding vocals bring the mosh pit straight to your ear holes for a headbanging good time. George Corpsegrinder Fisher of Cannibal Corpse even makes an appearance on the groovy intestinal rap. Some influences also from Mammoth Grinder, Iron Age, and of course Power Trip. I called it a very solid listen when it came out, but I don't remember a single song from it months later. Next up is Frozen Soul with Glacial Domination. More of a bolt thrower vibe with this band, and I did find this one rising at least a bit above the rest. I like the leads on Frozen Soul, nice guest appearances too, especially Dying Fetus's John Gallagher on Morbid Effigy. I like the synth interludes a lot, but they don't really integrate with the rest of the music. I'd be interested to hear these elements more woven into some of the songs. Good example of a band that feels like they're right on the cusp of being something more, but still just aren't quite there. And then of course we also have the latest from Gatecreeper in Dark Superstition. People are still telling me I'm wrong about this album, and as always, if you love it, I'm happy for you. But I'm also happy to stand alone with an unpopular opinion if I mean it. Like, this genre, death metal, black metal, all metal, really, it's built on bucking the status quo. If we're to a point where we all have to toe the line and like the same things, then what the fuck are we even doing? We might as well all listen to Taylor Swift.
You want me to fawn over your existence? Everything is spectacle and everything so perfect and right.
Once more, seeing all the praise, I went back and re-listened to this a few more times on top of the several I did when I was planning to review it, but I still find it incredibly dull. I give respect in that they are trying some new things here, ideas I even think might lead them to a real winner in the future, but the execution just still felt lacking to me. Compositions just felt way too samey, and my biggest attraction are Chase's vocals. He does the same squelchy cadence over and over and over again to the point that I was honestly annoyed.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like, your opinion, man.
But Flight, you may ask. Is there any modern OSDM that you do enjoy? Well, I'm glad you asked, because here are my picks for the bands that are also deeply inspired by the 90s sound, but have managed to carve out their own unique place in the genre. First up is Blood Incantation. Getting much more atmospheric with this spacey and at times even psychedelic crew. We've got some doom metal seeping in, but they balance it so well with the faster, more technical stuff, and the outcome is one that's entirely unique. Hidden Species is definitely one of my personal favorite songs from them, going for a more progressive direction. Elements of their sound here remind me of Cynic, and I think it's really excellent stuff. I don't always love it for the re-listening qualities, but as far as something that's got a little bit more of its own DNA, this is where it's at. We also have Necrot. This Oakland, California band formed in 2012 with Lifeless Birth, now their third full-length record. Their sound is very much soaked in the old school influences, but they often just get by on sheer aggression and bloodlust alone. They have some more occasional dynamic moments, but for the most part, this is very much kind of in keeping with the violence of Morbid Angel and Cannibal Corpse, but they just do it so well. That's an important factor here. Like, you can kind of just take the old blueprint, but you better be doing it better than anyone else on like every song. And on that note, we also need to talk about Skeletal Remains, especially their latest record, Fragments of the Ageless. This California death metal band just managed to make my favorite Cannibal Corpse album since A Skeletal Domain, I would say. Better than any of the Cannibal Corpse albums since then. Seriously, from the riffs to Chris Monroy's absolutely searing vocal delivery to the production, that's exactly what this is and executed to perfection. So if you're going to just retread old ideas, you need to do it as good, if not better, than the classics. And I think this is a great example of that. I know not everybody agrees with me, and that is totally fine. Maybe a controversial pick here, I also added Gruesome.
Violent punishment for violent actions. The cycle never stops, the chain reaction.
Now these guys are just short of being a straight up death cover band, with each album actually closely adhering to the sounds of the record in Death's discography that they're focusing on in order. That said, there aren't that many bands doing this particular old school style of death metal these days, and they do it very well, like to the point that it's almost uncanny how close they come. The songs are fun and well performed, making for really tight albums that are enjoyable and pretty memorable too, I'd say. I'm really interested to hear their next album, which will be taking notes from the seminal Human. And then my personal favorite of the pack by far is Horrendous.
Bring me back, but I'll keep on climbing.
These guys are also very much influenced by Death, especially their more technical and progressive era, but they've managed to really spin that into their own thing. All of their albums are great, but I find myself especially partial to 2018's Idol, and now with Ontological Mysterium in 2023, they have continued to spread their wings and experiment with new ideas. Also recommended to fans of everything from Atheist to Obscura. Frankly, stunning stuff. One of the best albums of last year in my opinion, and again, just I think by far the most talented, best songwriters, just best performers across the board. Horrendous, awesome, Let's do more of this. So just to recap, I don't hate any of these bands, nor do I think any of them are making bad music. I just think that many of the bigger names lack the originality of other groups in the genre that, at least in my opinion, deserve more exposure. I mean, this year alone, we've got serious wrecking balls from the likes of Vitriol, Apogean, Wormed, Exocrine, Ulcerate, Adversarial, and Fractal Generator, just to name a few. All names that plenty of people may be familiar with, but don't get even close to the amount of recognition or airplay, despite being by far more impressive, again, in my own humble opinion. Also, someone complained on the Octane Core video that I offered no objective evidence to my points and that it just boiled down to my personal bias, to which I responded, of course that's the case. I have never claimed to offer anything otherwise, and furthermore, when it comes to what sucks or is overrated, there is no objective marker. Like, sure, I could make objective statements about a song being off-key, the drummer missing the beat, or instruments being out of tune, but especially in metal, none of these really have any objective bearing on whether somebody does or does not enjoy the music. Hell, I love Sepultura's Morbid Visions, and there are many things objectively wrong with that album, even by the band's own admission, but sometimes that just adds to the charm. So yes, this is just my opinion, and now it's time to share your own. What do you think of these bands? Why do you think I'm wrong? Be specific. Tell me what I missed. I genuinely love hearing a well thought out comment from a perspective different from my own. Also, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you hated it, hit the dislike button. Consider subscribing if you're new here. I put out videos like this at least twice a week, but that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.